Most people move through the world convinced that their secrets are safe, buried beneath a carefully maintained surface of silent power. They believe their true intentions remain hidden behind the glass of a neutral expression, but there is a brutal reality to human behavior that most refuse to acknowledge. Concealment itself is a form of disclosure. The very energy you expend to hide a vulnerability acts as a beacon, illuminating the exact shape of what you fear most. It is a quiet, clinical tension. The realization that your male mindset of stoic protection might actually be a scripted performance of exposure.
You aren't being hunted for your secrets. You are being read through the patterns you use to guard them. The uncomfortable question isn't whether the world can see your harsh truth. It is simply a matter of how long they have been watching you reveal it. In the study of dark psychology, we often focus on what is hidden.
They don't react with anger. Instead, they simply speak for 30 seconds longer than necessary. The extra words aren't for clarity. They are an unprompted explanation, a frantic architectural reinforcement of a wall no one was actually pushing against. In that room, two people avoid eye contact. They don't need to look at each other to confirm what they've just witnessed. They have found the edge of that person's confidence. They now know exactly where the floor ends. And the performance begins. This is the harsh truth about our social navigation. We leak our insecurities not through our vulnerabilities, but through our overcompensations. Most believe that strength is projected through a polished exterior, yet it is the polish itself that reveals the crack. The person who corrects a minor, irrelevant inaccuracy in a casual conversation isn't seeking truth. They are defending their status as the smartest person in the room. The individual who consistently mentions the crushing weight of their schedule when declining a simple invitation isn't busy. They are performing importance. Every over-explanation is a map. It reveals the terrain the speaker is trying to avoid. When someone laughs first and loudest at their own mistake, they aren't displaying a healthy sense of humor. They are trying to colonize the ridicule before anyone else can occupy it. It is a preemptive strike against a perceived threat. Think of a social gathering where one person's humor consistently circles a single theme, perhaps their success or their intelligence. The jokes are self-deprecating, wrapped in a layer of just kidding, but the subject is never accidental. This is the male mindset at its most transparent. The belief that by mocking oneself, one retains control over the narrative. But in the eyes of a cold observer, the joke is merely a GPS coordinate. It tells the world exactly where you are most afraid of being judged. There is a specific physical sensation that accompanies this leakage. You have likely felt it. It's the feeling of finishing a sentence, and immediately knowing it was one sentence too long. The words were already out. The point was already made, but you kept talking. You added a justification. You added a because. In that micro moment, you weren't managing perception. You were being perceived with devastating clarity. The performance is the perception. The mechanism is involuntary and continuous. It functions in the silence between choices and the noise of our defenses. We work hardest to appear unaffected by the things that affect us most deeply.
We think the mask is opaque, but the mask is actually a mirror. It doesn't hide the face, it reflects the fear of the face being seen. Effort is not invisible, it has a shape. And once you learn to recognize that shape, you realize that people have been reading your fear for years simply by watching how hard you try to hide it. The most sophisticated manipulation is the kind the victim defends long after it ends. In the high-stakes theater of dark psychology, we often mistake a lack of feedback for a lack of observation. We assume that if no one calls out our insecurity, it must still be hidden. But the brutal reality is that the most dangerous people in the room are not the ones who criticize you, they are the ones who say nothing. Silence is rarely neutral. In social and professional hierarchies, understanding someone else's vulnerability is a high-value resource. And in the logic of silent power, if you spend a resource, you no longer possess it. To tell you that your weakness is visible would be to give you the chance to fix it. It would trigger your defenses, and the vulnerability would vanish behind a wall of reaction. By staying quiet, the observer preserves their access. They don't want to change you, they want to map you. Imagine a conversation where you find yourself speaking with a growing, subtle urgency. You are explaining a decision or perhaps justifying a delay across from you. The other person has grown quieter. They aren't disengaged. They are watching. They are measuring the exact angle at which your composure begins to fray. The harsh truth is that the conversation actually ended several exchanges ago. The moment they stopped listening to your words and started cataloging your rhythms, they have already decided how to handle you. You just haven't realized it yet. This is the hidden mechanism of influence that governs the male mindset.
In competitive spaces, information about human weakness doesn't need to be weaponized to function as a weapon. Its mere possession shifts the gravity of every interaction. Consider the colleague who never confronts you directly, but consistently introduces a specific type of stress at the precise moment you are least equipped to handle it. Or the friend whose advice sounds supportive, but somehow lands exactly where your deepest uncertainty lives. They aren't acting with obvious malice. They are simply using the map you gave them in a moment you thought was private. This is the brutal reality of social leverage, knowing something about someone and choosing not to disclose that you know it is the quietest, most durable form of power.
Feedback in these dynamics is never direct. It is strategically timed. It arrives when you are already under pressure, when refusal feels like an admission of failure, or when agreeing feels like the only path that won't cost you your status. You feel the squeeze, but you can't point to the hand doing the squeezing. The discomfort you feel right now isn't from being judged. It's from the recognition of a pattern you've lived from both sides. You have been the one speaking too much, unaware that your listener was filing away your tells for future use. But you have also been the quiet one. You have sat in that silence, watching someone else unravel, and you chose not to speak. You realized that their weakness was more useful to you as a secret than as a conversation. We often engineer rejection to avoid the discomfort of being truly accepted, but we engineer silence to maintain the discomfort of being truly known. The most sophisticated influence isn't a loud command. It is the quiet adjustment of the room based on a truth you didn't know was visible. When the observant person goes silent, they aren't leaving the conversation. They are taking ownership of it. The realization that you have been observed is uncomfortable. It creates a sense of exposure, a desire to retreat behind a thicker wall of silent power. But there is a deeper, more brutal reality waiting in the silence. You were never just the subject of this study. You were the practitioner. We often believe that by developing an awareness of dark psychology, we are building a shield. We think that by learning to identify the over-explanations of others, or the strategic silences of the observant, we are somehow exempting ourselves from the game. But the harsh truth is that awareness and participation are not opposites. They are the same event, viewed from different sides of the glass. The person most fluent in reading behavioral signals is almost always the most practiced in producing them.
You didn't learn to see the map of someone else's insecurity through clinical detachment. You learned it through the intimate, quiet rehearsal of your own. You recognize the extra sentence in another person's speech because you have felt the weight of it in your own throat. You understand the utility of silence because you have used that silence to hold someone else in place. This isn't an accusation. It is simply a description of how the male mindset adapts to a world of constant, unspoken measurement. Seeing clearly doesn't make you a judge, it makes you a collaborator. The very fact that these patterns feel familiar, that you can see them playing out in your memories like a film you've already watched, is the proof. You haven't been watching a video about human nature. You have been looking into a mirror that was quietly tilted towards you while you were busy looking at everyone else. There is a level of dark psychology that operates beyond the mask, beyond the silence, and even beyond the lie. It is the realm of the decoy. Most believe that when someone shares a vulnerability, the secret has been surrendered. But the brutal reality is that the most sophisticated individuals do not accidentally reveal their true weaknesses. Instead, they strategically perform a decoy vulnerability, a softer, more acceptable insecurity designed to occupy your attention and protect a much deeper, more volatile truth. This is the hidden architecture of the male mindset in high-stakes environments. The presentation of a rehearsed honesty.
Imagine a one-on-one conversation where someone shares something that sounds incredibly intimate and brave. They speak of their anxiety or a past failure with a fluency that suggests deep self-awareness. But as you listen, you notice the phrasing is slightly too refined. The emotional beats arrive with the precision of a stage play. You nod, moved by their vulnerability, but somewhere in the exchange a cold realization settles in. You weren't actually invited inside. You were invited to the entrance of inside. You were shown a carefully curated front room so that you would stop looking for the door to the basement. This three-layer model is the harsh truth of human identity. There is the weakness you show, the weakness you believe you are hiding, and the weakness underneath that belief, the one that actually structures your life.
Consider the person in a social circle who is known for one specific struggle, perhaps their relationship history or their financial stress. This known vulnerability absorbs all the oxygen in the room. It creates bonds, generates empathy, and functions as a perfect form of misdirection. Because everyone is focused on the problem, the person openly discusses the actual mechanism driving their behavior.
Perhaps a pathological need for control or a deep-seated fear of being unremarkable goes completely unexamined. The openness is genuine, but the incompleteness is strategic. In this dynamic, silent power isn't held by the person who hides everything. It is held by the person who knows exactly what to reveal to keep you from looking at the rest. The discomfort here is that self-awareness is not the same as self-knowledge. You can be fluent in describing your flaws and still be a total stranger to the mechanism driving that description. Often, the performance of insight is the most effective concealment available. It convinces the world, and more importantly, it convinces you that there is nothing left to find. The brutal reality is that you might be using your own self-analysis as a shield. You have mapped the problems you are comfortable having, and you have presented them to the world so convincingly that even you have forgotten their decoys. The relationship felt warm. The warmth was the mechanism. We must ask ourselves if the version of us we've spent years refining is a bridge to our true nature, or a wall built to ensure we never have to meet it. If your self-awareness has become a layer of concealment, what is it that you are so afraid to see? We often approach the study of dark psychology with a specific, unspoken hope that by understanding the mechanism, we can escape it. We believe that awareness functions as a shield, a way to move through the world without leaking our intentions or vulnerabilities. But the brutal reality is that knowing about these patterns does not dissolve them. It only changes the signal's frequency. There is a specific, modern posture that has become increasingly readable. The performance of the psychologically literate. You have likely seen it. It's the person who, in the middle of a heated exchange, becomes visibly, deliberately calm. They use measured pauses and considered phrasing. They maintain a slight, clinical distance in their gaze, as if they are watching the interaction from a balcony, rather than participating in it.
They believe they are projecting silent power. But to a truly observant eye, this isn't strength, it is management. Strategic neutrality has a specific texture. Forced calm has a recognizable frequency. When you are monitoring yourself in real time, your restraint is not ease, it is effort wearing the face of ease. And as we established, effort is never invisible. It has a shape. The person managing themselves this carefully is still being governed by the very dynamic they are performing freedom from. Their studied calm is simply an overcompensation for the chaos they are trying to hide. The harsh truth is that even the act of analyzing a situation can be a power move. Consider the individual who has read widely about manipulation and now narrates it in real time during a conversation. They might gently point out what someone else is doing, framing themselves as the impartial, aware observer. They say things like, "I see what you're trying to do there," or "That's an interesting tactic." They believe they have stepped outside the game. But the role of the impartial analyst is not neutral. Positioning yourself as the one who sees the patterns is itself a bid for dominance. It is a way of placing yourself above the dynamic, which is simply another way of participating in it. This is the male mindset attempting to win through observation rather than confrontation. The final inversion is the most uncomfortable. There is no stable position outside the patterns of human behavior. Observation changes the observer. Awareness becomes its own behavior. You might have learned to hide your overcompensation, but in doing so, you have begun to overcompensate about your overcompensating. You are transmitting a new signal, the signal of someone who knows too much to be authentic, but not enough to be at peace. The goal of this understanding isn't to grant you immunity.
That immunity does not exist. The attempt to step outside influence is merely a more sophisticated form of being influenced by the fear of it. The realization we must eventually face is that we are never just observers of the mechanism. We are always in some way inside it. Some people engineer rejection to avoid the discomfort of being truly accepted. Others engineer awareness to avoid the discomfort of being truly human. The discomfort you feel right now, the sense that even your self-improvement is just another layer of the mask, is not a sign that you failed. It is evidence that the mechanism is still operating. We have arrived back at the beginning, though the air in the room has changed. You began this journey asking what others could see in you, fearing the exposure of your secrets beneath the surface of silent power. But the brutal reality is far more intimate.
This was never a guide on how to read others, nor a shield to protect your own male mindset from observation. It was a mirror. The harsh truth isn't that the world sees your flaws. It's that what you have been showing and what you believe yourself to be are not the same thing. Awareness hasn't granted you immunity. It has simply made the signal more complex. As you move back into the world, you will find yourself watching a conversation, noticing a pause, and realizing you cannot remember when the performance started, or if it ever actually ends.